Oh, hi there. I'm Kat. Thank you for joining me for Chat with Kat. We're going on a journey and having conversations with people from a variety of backgrounds and experiences. And during this journey, we're going to probably laugh and smile. We'll have moments of compassion and cry. We may be angry or feel confronted, and we may be amazed and just need to ponder. So, whatever the emotion is that comes up, let's take a moment to breathe and ask ourselves why we're feeling this. And also, let's ask, what can I learn from this? So go ahead and like, share, subscribe to this, and make sure that your friends and family and colleagues and anyone you feel could get something from this gets to see this. So let's get on with our journey with Chat with Kat.
Well, hi, Grace. It's so good to see you. I'm so glad you came in here today. I do know we know each other from the Self-Perfected group and from the women's group, but I know a lot of people here probably don't know who you are. So just take a moment and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Okay, I'm Gracie Hicks. I'm 25 years old, and right now I live in Bakersfield. I was born here, and then for a while I moved to the beach in California, and now I'm back here, and I'm really excited to share my story with you today because I've gone through some hard things, like everyone does in life, and it's as I've gotten older, it's become really important to share my story. I used to be kind of embarrassed or, like I didn't want to put something so heavy on people a lot of times. And they would ask me, like, oh, well, where'd you grow up? And, oh, why'd you move so much or whatever. Um, but now, like, as I've kind of processed more of what I went through, I'm more passionate about sharing it. And I dealt with some, well, I can like give you my whole backstory, but I really want to share my story with women and young women who have experienced abuse in relationships, and so that's why I'm wanting to share my story today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having the courage to do this. And
Okay, so my childhood, I'll start there because I have kids now, and I know how important that foundation is for, how we deal with things in our life that come about. So I had two older siblings and a little brother. And we were like a very family oriented family. We did a lot of things together. We all played a lot of sports and were very active, and I had like a fun childhood in that aspect. And it was pretty like traditional parenting, like, my parents had a lot of rules and stuff, and they did like spank us sometimes, whatever. Which I don't agree with, but like nothing too extreme happened in my childhood, other than my parents did drink a lot of alcohol, and that really bothered me as a kid. Like, I remember I would get really irritated whenever they were drinking. And they would call me like a little police officer because I would like walk in the room and be like, "You're drinking again." I didn't like it. And it's interesting because that actually like played a big part in later on in my life, alcohol and stuff. So that always stands out to me. Like, as a young kid, I remember like really not liking it. And so that was like my childhood. I played softball. And my dad was my coach. So we had a very close relationship. We spent like a lot of one-on-one time together. And he like mentored me with softball, and he really believed in me. I know he really wanted me to go far with that. And so I cherished that time that I had with him. And that was from like third grade on. I played softball. I have my story written out here, so I hope it's not all over the place. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. So I really started getting into softball when I was like 10 and about to go into middle school. I played on like club teams and travel teams, and like we traveled a lot to my tournaments. And that kind of, from my perspective, my family spent a lot of time like doing that.
Mhm.
And yeah, so then when I got into middle school, my dad was actually at a softball fundraiser for my team, and it was like at a golf course, and they had been drinking all day. That's like typical at golf courses, I guess. And he was riding on the back of a golf cart, and he fell off and got like a traumatic brain injury on his brain, and then he was hospitalized, and he was in the hospital for over a year from a traumatic brain injury, and it like completely shattered my family kind of because he was like, speaking from my personal experience, I see the role that a father has in a family. You know, it's keeping everyone together kind of and like on track. And so when my dad got hurt, that all changed, and he was like in a medically induced coma for about a month, I think. And the first time I saw my dad afterwards, he just looked like a completely different person. Like his whole head had been shaved, and it was really swollen, and he had stitches, and it was like a shock. Like it was very emotional. And so at that time I was 13. It was also like a very crucial time, you know, in our lives when we're like starting to experience puberty and like all these emotions and hormones. And so that was really challenging. So we were like visiting him all the time at different hospitals that he was being transferred to. And it was like a very emotional roller coaster because he would make progress. But when I say progress, I mean like the most progress that my dad ever made was, you know, he could say like a few words. It was like he was a little kid again. Or maybe he could like hold his hand up and like wave to you, but like totally different. So it was like this big loss that we were going through because I didn't have my dad in the same way anymore, but he was still alive. So it was like he didn't die. He was still like there, and we had this hope that he's gonna get better. You know, he's gonna come back from this. I had that hope. I pictured, oh, one day he's gonna come home again. You know, maybe he'll be in a wheelchair, but like he'll come home. And so it was this big roller coaster. And then he got like a few infections, and then his progress would go down again, and it was scary. We were like, oh, what's happening? We had to like wear masks and like the clothing, like the paper clothes you put over your clothes, and you go see someone because you can't take germs in there. And meanwhile, I'm still going to school sometimes. My mom kind of was just like, it's okay if you guys miss a bunch of school. But still like dealing with drama in middle school, and you know, I started liking boys and talking to a bunch of boys. I think I use that to distract myself a lot. And my mom started having like a lot of erotic behavior, just like drinking a ton, not sleeping, just doing like very uncharacteristic things. And she was obviously under like a lot of stress because she went from being like not a stay-at-home mom, but pretty much she worked like part-time. And my dad was like the main breadwinner, and he, you know, had a lot of say over everything, to like now she's in charge of everything, and meanwhile she's dealing with him like fighting for his life, kind of. So I understand the stress that she was under, or at least now I can like put myself in her shoes. I used to be really, really angry at her. Like my siblings more so were just like sad and like, what's going on? And I like had this hatred, this rage for some reason for my mom. I just was like, how dare you like abandon us and go drink all the time when we're going through this? And my dad would want you to like be here for us. And I was just so angry with the whole situation. And so I see all that now, but at the time it was just, I was very rebellious and angry. And I so like, for example, one time my siblings and I, she like told us she was gonna go hang out with a friend or something. And my sister was a sophomore or junior in she was a junior in high school, or sophomore. She was early on in high school. And so maybe she was like 16, or she wasn't an adult yet. And my mom said she was going to go hang out with a friend. And then like 2 days went by and we hadn't heard from her. And we were like, where's mom? Couldn't get a hold of her. Had to like call the police, and she was missing. And finally, like they found her at this guy's house. And she had been hanging out with this guy. And the police had to go in and like wake her up, where they like hit your chest to like wake you up. She had been like passed out drunk or something. We were in the car outside, and I was so mad. Like she walked out all drunk still, basically. And my siblings were like crying, and they were like, "We love you, Mom." And she looked at me, and I just was like, "I fucking hate you." I laugh now, but it's really sad. But now I actually have a decent relationship with my mom still, despite all this. But it's taken a lot for me to like process everything that happened and like understand the situation she was in, and she wasn't taught any better. But yeah, that's some juicy stuff. But then after that, I said like I would distract myself a lot by like talking to guys, texting guys, like crushing on them, whatever. I had like a few different boyfriends. And during this time, my dad is still alive. But then November of the following year, in 2015, so I was 14 years old, my dad died. And it was like very unexpected, despite him being there. Like we didn't know. It wasn't like they told us or anything. It was unexpected. I actually was staying the night at a boy's house. My mom didn't know. I had like lied to her about where I was, and I woke up to like all these text messages that were like, "Gracie, I'm so sorry. Like, your dad's in a better place." And I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, what do you mean?" And I just remember like just like falling on the floor and yelling like, "No, like this didn't happen." And this boy was probably like, "What is happening?" Yeah, so I went through that there, which is like also not an ideal place to hear that your dad is dead. And then I went home, and I don't really remember the rest of that day, but after that things just kind of got worse. But I remember my family never like talked about it. It wasn't like we all sat down and were like, "Okay, dad's gone. Like, how are you guys feeling?" It was just like everyone kind of isolated. And that's just really hard to go through, without like a role model to talk to about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was in November. And then this boy who I had liked for a long time, he reached out to me again. And at the time, I was like, I think, had so many emotions going on. It was like when he like reached out to me because he was like, I'm so sorry that, I heard what happened with your dad, Gracie. Like, can I come see you?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yes, you can. And at the time, I think I just clung to him because he was a little bit older than me. And he was the first boy that I ever, like, I had extremely strong feelings for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I just clung to him during that time. And unfortunately, he was not a good influence on me. And he started out really sweet and, well, kind of like he was extremely controlling, but he started out like so much sweet talk, like I'm the girl, I'm his girl, I'm the girl of his dreams. He's never been able to get over me, all this stuff. And it was totally based on feelings, which is part of why I'm so passionate now about basing relationships on agreements, not feelings, because this was totally based on feelings. And I know now, like, your feelings can be so invalid and so one-sided, like so skewed from reality. And mine were, and he was very abusive emotionally and physically over time. And my mom I just didn't have anyone there to notice that and pay attention. And it blows my mind still, kind of like that I put up with it for so long, because we dated for several years. And it just is really sad, like how low my self-esteem must have been to like stay in that relationship. And so that's why I'm really passionate. Since that happened, I really want to like share my story with women. And the interesting thing is, the older that I've gotten and the more people that I talk to, I see that it's not that uncommon of a story. Like, I've met several women who are in abusive relationships, and I've met several people whose parent died when they were really young. It's like, but at the time, I was so just, I don't want to say like obsessed with myself, but yeah, like I thought I had the worst life ever. And I thought that I just felt like such a victim to everything. And that's something that Self-Perfected that group has helped me so much. Like, that's when I really shifted my mentality from like being a victim to everything that happened to me to like taking responsibility for it. Because for the longest time, I was just so angry at that ex of mine, and I just like didn't understand how he could do that to me, Like, how can you just like beat the shit out of somebody who is going through that? And how can you like tear someone down so much and say like the meanest things, when they're going through so much stuff? But now I look at it and I see like the role that I played. I mean, I stayed with him for so long, first of all. Like, I hope that I raise my kids in a way where if anyone like speaks to them that way, they'll just not even feel the need to defend themselves, and they'll just walk away, But yeah, so there's a lot more, but I feel like I'm just like throwing up on you everything that happened to me.
Oh,
No, and I'm so glad that you are sharing this because it's so important for us to realize that like nobody has a perfect life. We may look like from the outside that everything is going fine and we may mask it really well, but like inside what's going on can be really traumatic and horrible. And I'm so glad you're sharing this because it's going to help other women particularly realize like they're not alone in this and that there is, you know, support for them, right? There's a way for them to have help and to move past this, and they're not in that dark world by themselves. So thank you for sharing this. I know it's really personal and really hard, but thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting too because there are so many like helpful resources and stuff. But something I want to say is like it takes like you have to like decide, okay, I'm not going to deal with this anymore and like I have to exit this situation. And I was so like in my feelings that I didn't do that. I had like several opportunities to, and that's part of the thing. Like I used to get really angry with myself, but now I see like, you know, there's no point in being angry with myself about it. It's just like I can look at, okay, why did I make this decision? But like I had multiple opportunities to get help, and I didn't. I literally like protected him because I was scared of his consequences for, you know, being abusive. And that's sad that like that was my priority. But it just goes to show, like I just saw a video about this today, and it was talking about like the best way to protect your daughter specifically, but I mean this could apply to boys too, from not I don't even know if they were specifically talking about like domestic abuse, but just in general, like anything on the internet basically, or like sexual predator, anything like that, is to build their self-esteem. Because, you know, if a child has high enough self-esteem, then they wouldn't be in that situation ideally. So I just think that that's really interesting. And
what is it that really got you moving forward from there then? Because obviously it takes a lot of courage to do that. And when you're in a low point, like, was there a moment that just said enough is enough, or what made you really move forward?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that. You got me back on track. So there was a moment where like I saw that, so I ended up having to move because my family started finding out that my mom she was kind of neglecting us kids. So like my mom had given her guardianship over to my aunt. And so I was physically moved out of that environment, which is like a big part of it. Because then he physically wasn't there next to me anymore. So that like, it just it didn't really give me a choice, but I did still keep talking to him, and I tried to keep dating him. But eventually I saw like he was with some other girl, and it made me so mad because I like totally isolated myself after I moved and all this stuff, just to see that like he was with another girl. So I got really mad, and I just like went and told my grandma who I was staying with, and I just like told her everything. And I knew that when I told her that, like I wasn't gonna have a chance and then another choice. Like I knew that once I shared all that, like that was kind of gonna be it. And so that was like the decision. That was a memory that I have where I was like, okay, I'm deciding I'm gonna do this so that like I have no choice anymore. And then after that, I started really looking inward and like focusing on me, inside of me, like what was going on. And that was like a long period of time. I was like very into like enlightenment, and like I liked this idea that like I kind of clung to this idea, I guess, that like all these bad things can happen and then you can change from them, and go forward, because I was like being faced with that. It was like, okay, this is done. Like I have to go forward now. I can't just be here forever. So I looked inward a lot and spent a lot of time doing that, and started like reading and stuff. But I still had like a lot of unhealthy patterns, because then I met my now husband when I was like a senior in high school here in Bakersfield, and we started dating. And in the beginning of our relationship, we still had like, it was much more of a healthy relationship, but I had very codependent tendencies. Like I just was, again, my feelings, I let them sway so much based on this person. Like it was like I still valued myself based on like him being in my life or him liking me, And so my husband, Jewel, he's a very, gosh, he's a gentleman and he's very kind. And so, we eventually figured it out. But we were young. I wasn't even 18 and we started dating. And so, yeah, in the beginning, it was not toxic, but very codependent. I mean, I guess it's kind of toxic and still based on feelings. And then in 2021, I got pregnant. And that is when everything kind of changed, because it was unexpected and we were being faced with this really big responsibility. And then after that, we were introduced to Techno Tutor in this group. And that is what led to me and my husband getting married, and, kind of like totally shifting our relationship to being based on agreements and just working on our communication. And since then, it's been so much better of a life. And I'm so grateful like that this happened, because, now I see all these patterns that I got from my childhood, and, all this stuff that we went through, and like, I will not carry that on to my kids. So we've made like some of the best decisions that we've made have been because of this community. Like after my son was born, we stopped drinking, smoking completely. And I'm so glad now, because I know how much that affected my life, and I'm glad my kids are not going to have that influence around in their life. And it's helped me like process a lot of the things that I went through. Yeah.
Oh, and that's just an amazing journey to hear you talk about that, where, like literally moving out of where you were before to get out of that environment, but then being able to just, when you realize the moment that if you shared this thing with this person who cares about you, that was the end. Like that, there was no going back to that old way of being anymore, and just you had to move forward. But then the fact that you could actually build a new relationship with somebody, and even though it may not have been the best way to start the relationship, you've now grown and developed that relationship where it's probably, the best thing that could have happened, and probably better than you would have imagined at that point, right?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Jewel, my husband, has been like, he's my safe space, like he always let me open up with him about stuff. And that was really like, because I had told my grandma like some stuff, but I never got specific about like instances of abuse and stuff like that. And my husband has always been that safe space, and I'm so grateful for that. with him and this community as well. I've gotten to talk to a lot of women, and I'm pretty sure it was on a self-perfected call. That was the first time I ever said, like, I was in an abusive relationship, and I don't remember. I'm sure people were like, whoa. But, you know, it was like I felt safe and I could share that. And that I think is so amazing. And yeah, I don't know if people realize like the effect that it's had on me. But it's such a cool group. And yeah, just I see now, like, I've had to forgive that ex, and I've thought about it so much. Like, he didn't have his dad in his life, and like there were times where his mom would come in because she would hear what was happening, and she would like yell at him and be like, you're just like your dad, like you're doing the exact same thing. And at the time, I don't even know, that didn't like stick with me, but now I look back and I'm like, wow, like it was right in my face that like these things just keep repeating, you know, generationally. And like if you don't deal with it, and you know, then nothing's gonna change. And I was kind of like living that same my mom's same pattern. Like I didn't share that much about that, but during that time I was drinking a bunch and like doing drugs and just trying to escape my reality. And so I was totally like following down that same path. And I'm just really glad that I shifted that, and now, you know, I can hopefully help others to do the same thing.
Wow. I mean, it's so amazing that you came to the realization and obviously had the support to be able to see the patterns and realize this is a generational thing, that we carry these things on. But also, you know, it's got me thinking, like, a lot of people don't realize, they just think like that's normal, right? They think it's normal. If that's the way I saw this happening in my life, then that's the way it should be. Because like, what else do I know? And you know, I mean, you know, at some other time I'll share more about myself, but I actually didn't realize that my house was completely dysfunctional and abusive until I was about probably 11 or 12 years old. And that was after being at a friend's house, and she apologized for the fact that her mom yelled at her brother or something. And I was like, oh, that's okay. My mom yells all the time. But I didn't take that, like, she was like, no, my mom like never yells. So like for me, that was an instant where I realized like, oh, this is not the normal way of communication in a household. Like that's not normal, that someone's way to communicate is just to scream and yell all the time and be, you know, and say bad things and worse. But you know, like, but that for me, that was a normal growing up. And I think until we realize like this is actually a generational thing, we just think this is the normal thing that happens, right? So and that's huge to be able to now try to shift that and change that. So
yeah, it is interesting what you were saying. Like a lot of times we don't realize that there's a different way to be doing things.
and you know, it's interesting, you're talking about relationships and principles now instead of being based on emotions. That's probably going to be something new for a lot of people. Do you want to like talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So the way I understand that is like, you know, when nowadays, like typically just the way things are, it's like you meet somebody and you kind of see whether or not you vibe or if you're attracted to this person, and you kind of just go from there if you want to be in a relationship with them or not. And this could be like dating, or this could just be a friend too. But what typically happens, and this is what happened in my case, is like those feelings change, or you know, they're one-sided, and then things get messy, or like you disagree on something, and then it's really easy to just be like, okay, I'm done, this isn't working. Or in my case, like you just cling on, and it just becomes very unhealthy and not beneficial to anyone. But when you make an agreement to like base your relationship on principles, you're saying like, look, it doesn't matter how we feel because that's just made up kind of in our mind, you know. Or like we can change how we feel, but it doesn't matter how we feel about something. We're gonna like agree right now on what we're gonna base our relationship on and like the things that we agree to. And so like for my husband and I, it's supporting each other to our highest potential, you know? It's like we don't tear each other down or treat each other poorly. And in the past, when we first like decided to do this, if we would catch the other one doing that, we just say, hey, like, what's going on? Like, this is not how we function in this relationship. You know, that's not best for the both of us. It's not best for our kids. We're not going to keep doing that, you know? And then you change the behavior versus just like, I just see like so much stuff, especially on social media, of relationships, and like it's all based on like, oh, my husband did this and that bugs me, so now I'm gonna, you know, leave him or whatever. And it's really sad like how many families get broken apart by divorce just because like they weren't on the same page about things. Yeah.
So now that you've got a relationship based on principles and it's better than the relationship you had before because you knew each other before you started all of this,
Yeah.
and now you've got children. So how has that been different with you raising your children now?
How has our relationship been different?
Yeah, well, just I guess with having the principles, because obviously there's another stressor there. You're taking care of another life, right? You're trying to give them the right guidance as well.
Yeah. The way it's been different is, um, so we got TT after my son was born. So it's like we've had these agreements. My son has always been around when we made them, but it's just improved. Like there's maybe been, my son's 4 years old, and I can think of like maybe 3 times where my husband and I, mostly me, like raised our voice with each other. And so it's just that alone, like, because we don't really have big disagreements anymore. And those 3 times, they were such silly things. Like, it did not last long. But to me, having kids has been even more of like a motivation just to communicate in a healthy way, because those 3 times when we did raise our voice, I watched my son the whole time, and it just like his energy like completely changed. You know, one of the times he was old enough and he was like trying to distract us kind of like, and I see that as like, ooh, he didn't like that situation, and he felt uncomfortable. You know, he was like trying to, you know, change the way that the conversation was going. And so it's like having those agreements, in my opinion, has been like completely instrumental to my kids' esteem and like what they're gonna, you know, how they're gonna have their relationships when they're older. Because yeah, it's like we don't argue, and we don't tear each other down in front of our kids, or, you know, speak loud, yell at each other, whatever. We don't do that. And so they get to see a very healthy relationship and like what good communication looks like. Yeah. What's my son, he has such a big vocabulary, and he says, like if he'll mishear something that I say, because a lot of the times I'm like cooking and he's like standing off to the side, so maybe he doesn't like hear me that well. He'll be like, "But you said that." And I'm like, "No, I didn't say that, buddy. I said this." And he's like, "Oh, did I misunderstand you?" And I just think that's
Aw.
so cute. Like he's said it to like our other family members and they're like, "Oh my gosh, did he just ask if he misunderstood me?" Like, whoa. And I'm like, yeah, he's got such a good vocabulary and he's so good at communicating. It's
Mm.
awesome.
Oh, what an incredible experience to have and see that in your family where like the normal is calm and peace in the family and being able to communicate and understanding like what that actually is even from a young age as opposed to I think what a lot of people experience where we think it's communication and realize we had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And so now that you're in the self-perfected group, you're doing the Technitutor, obviously it's changed your life and your relationships. And you're bringing your children up with this and seeing results. I mean, you're seeing how smart your son is and how big his
Mhm.
vocabulary is and understanding. Um, how is that changing the way you're parenting from like your experience of growing up?
It has it's changing it by something that I see like come up within me a lot is just wanting to control kind of, and I don't know if that's just like based on, I think it's a number of things. I think that's kind of how my parents parented me, and I think based on all the things that happened in my life that were like out of control, I kind of like I want to keep everything in control.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen that come up with me in my parenting, but being a part of this community and just like seeing that that actually doesn't work also, um that has changed a lot, like the way that I parent, and just like stepping back and letting my kids try things and fail, or fall down and get hurt, and figuring things out. It's building their self-esteem, which is like literally what I was talking to you about earlier, like why I think
Mm-hmm.
maybe chose to stay in those relationships that weren't serving me. Um, yeah, so just like letting them build their self-esteem and not trying to control everything.
Mm-hmm. No. And I love that you're allowing your kids to be kids and experience these, falls and these hurts and things like that so they can build up their esteem because I think that there's been a huge shift in the way people parented over the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years or so. I mean, I'm a bit older, so I'm of the generation, if you fell down and scraped your knee, you got up. And if you were unlucky, they put iodine on it, right? So think about having like rubbing alcohol put on a wound. That was like what the iodine was like. And so, you would just go like, no, I'm good. And you put a Band-Aid on it or something, or you'd go,
Yeah.
but like that was the kind of world I grew up in. It was kind of like pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and it was a much different generation, but I think we
Yeah.
kind of that generation went the other way and went too much of like, oh, don't hurt yourself. Don't,
Yeah.
don't do this because you'll hurt yourself. So I'm glad to hear you're like, no, experience these things so you can like, go through that and then be confident and,
Yeah. And the other thing is that the other thing that's very different is that we don't drink or smoke or anything like that.
mm-hmm,
Um so like we're always here with our kids, and also we don't spank or do anything like there's no hitting, there's no physical punishment.
mm-hmm.
And I think that is also really important, because I just I just I just don't agree with that.
All
um
right.
I don't understand how, like, it just the logic doesn't make sense of like telling your kids, uh this is what happens if you do something bad, but then when they get older, like expecting that they're not going to do that to somebody else,
Mm,
or that they're not going to think that that's okay to be treated that way in a relationship. So that's another thing that's definitely come about from all this.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess what's interesting is a lot of us probably did grow up with spankings or something like that at some point, right?
Yeah.
And then to realize that there's another way to parent. It's I mean, I can only imagine, because I don't have kids yet, maybe at some point, but I can only imagine that it's got to be a lot more challenging if you have no alternative. Like, if they don't listen to this, here's the immediate consequence, right?
Yeah.
Then, so what is your alternative? Because I know a lot in the community, we know what
Right.
we do, what the alternative is, but I think a lot of people out there are just going to hear like the soft parenting and go, well, that doesn't work either. So what
Right.
is the actual alternative?
Yeah. It's a really good point, because it is a lot more challenging. And I think the alternative, in our house is, it's like, for one, parents need to shift their mindset, because if you're just looking for a different way to control your kids that's not like spanking, then you're kind of missing the point, um because like we do our best to try to not come from a point of control. Of course, if it's like a dangerous situation, then yeah, grab your kid and get him out of the street or whatever. You have to control that situation. But like, we always explain everything beforehand. We're always giving explanations to why we're asking our son to not push his little sister, or you know to why he needs to finish his sandwich before he can have ice cream, because your body doesn't function well on just sugar alone. You're gonna crash. And like, we're always explaining those things to him and letting him question us. And then also there's times where like it's a reminder for me, like, oh, what he's doing right now really isn't a big deal. It's okay. I can let him express himself in this way right now. And I think that's a big part of it. And then, some things there are real consequences too. But like, a lot of times it's really not that serious.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the most interesting part, is that you take the time to explain to him about things. Because I don't know if you were that kid, but I was the kid who was always asking why. But why? But why? But why? Because nobody would explain anything to me. It was just like, because I said so. Well, that's not an
Yeah.
answer. In my brain, that's still today, that's not an answer. If you tell me to do something in a job and you're like, oh, but because that's the way we do it, I'm like, my brain's going, yeah, but that's not an answer. Like, give me the real
Yeah.
reason. Like,
Yeah.
and then my brain starts going, but there's got to be a better way to do this.
Mhm.
Right. So, like, I don't like this. This doesn't work. This is, makes things longer and whatever. So there's got to be a better way. But if there's not an actual reason, like, hey, we've tested it out and this works the best when we do this with our clients. Okay, got it. Right. But I mean, I think even today, like, that's my brain now, even today, because I think it came from nobody really giving me an answer.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But that's good, like, that you question things. And yeah, because if you never question anything, then it's like we said earlier, you just think that that's how it should be,
Yeah.
My son,
Yeah.
that was his favorite word for so long, is why. And he just, like, to everyone. But it's not like it just stopped with one why. It's like you explain something and he's like, but why? It would just keep going and going. And sometimes it would be really challenging to like answer, because I'm like, well, actually, I don't know why. And it's cute because now my daughter, she's 16 months, she is already starting the why. And because she hears him. But I mean, he was probably like 3 when he started asking why, but she's like just a little over 1. I'm like, oh man.
So are they at that age able to use the tools right now, or how do you work that with them?
Yeah, they are. My son, he loves it now. There was a period of time when it was a little bit challenging for us to get him to do it consistently. But, we just had to be patient and not force and just like explain again, like this is why we're doing this. It's important to be able to read. It's important to be able to understand information. And now he loves it. He asks to do it every day.
Mm-hmm.
He turned 4 in March, so that was like 2 months ago. And he can read like more than 10 words. He can read 3 and 4 letter words, and it just recently has started like picking up like so quickly. He's learning how to read, and he loves that. And so naturally, like my daughter, she just wants to copy everything he does. And so when he sits down and does his, she's right there and she's like TT TT, and it's
Aw.
fun. Yeah.
Oh, good. And are you living in an area where there's a big community for support, or are you a little bit away from people?
We're a little bit away from people. We have a few people here. But that's actually something that we talk about a lot, is like how important it is for the people that we surround our kids with. And because my husband and I, we talk about like, we didn't have very many good close friends like when we were teenagers and stuff. Like we had our friends from high school, but like look at those influences, they weren't very good. And so that's something that's important to us, is like letting our kids have friends who are aligned in principles and like living a similar lifestyle that we are living. And so yeah, that's important to us to immerse them in that environment.
Right. Wow. And I know you've been, I mean, you've been on this huge journey in your life, and so many things have changed. But now that you're like in this point where you're like, okay, I figured out how to have good relationships now, and I figured out how to, work on myself and do things better. So now what are your next goals?
So my next goals, I have a few goals right now. They're kind of like soft goals because they're not super specific, but like I'm working on growing a garden with my kids. And this summer we just started really small, but some of my goals are like in the next year and next few years to really increase the amount of foods that we're growing ourselves. And also for me personally is like to make a lot more mom friends and talk to a lot more women in general. They don't have to be moms, but just like being that person who women feel comfortable being themselves with, and maybe sharing like some things that they've gone through. Those are two of my really big goals. And yeah, that's like what I'm focusing on right now. I'm trying to just slow down and really, my main goal is like my parenting with my kids, because that's my main responsibility.
Yeah.
But we also have um we have like 5 to 10 year goals, and we want to have land, and animals and all that good stuff.
Great. Yeah, and I am so appreciative of the fact that you just came on here and wanted to share, because I know there's for a lot of people this has been a scary thing. To share anything about themselves. They feel good in our group because they know the people there, but to be able to share something where there's a possibility that people will see it who don't know who you are, right?
Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming and sharing that, and really just showing that just because you had a really horrific experience doesn't mean that that's how your life has to continue, or that you need to keep being even living in victim mode,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. Thank you. I know I didn't think I was going to be, but I was like nervous once I got on the call. I'm like, oh my gosh, got a little heart rate going to share everything. But yeah, we're all human, and unfortunately, like a lot of us go through some really hard things, but we can either use it to make changes, or we can just keep on victimizing ourselves and repeating patterns and stuff.
Right. And I mean, Gracie, if you could go back, and I ask everyone this, like, if you were to go back to your 10-year-old self, like, what advice would you give her?
It's a hard question. I've thought about this. I thought you might ask me that, honestly. I think I would just tell her, like, that you are valuable and you don't deserve to be treated poorly in any way. You don't deserve to be torn down. Like, there's never anything that should be so important that you're willing to, like, take abuse for it. And so I think I would say something like that. Like, stand up for yourself, kind of,
Wow, so important. And I know some people are going to hear that and really take that to heart right now and use that for themselves. So thank you.
Thank you.
So now, is there anything else that you want to share or any other advice you want to give, whether it's to women or mothers or just in general?
The only other advice I would say is, like, if you have if you know that something is not right, then you can decide to change it. You can decide to do something differently, whether it's, like, in your parenting or in your relationship. Like, if you see that this isn't working, or this isn't right, then you can stand up and change it and do things differently. Like, don't be afraid of what other people are gonna think or
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want people to go back and just really listen to that and take that to heart, because I know it can be hard when you feel like there's nothing else around you and this is all you know, or this is maybe the best you're going to get, you think. I want people to really take that on. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, Gracie. I appreciate you sharing this with us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.